Raven City, a concrete jungle pulsating with neon, drenched in rain-slicked darkness. This city never sleeps. It growls, it races, it claws its way through the night. And tonight, the air crackles with more than just humidity. Detective Jack Stratton squinted through the downpour. The streets throbbed with a different kind of energy tonight. A low rumble echoed between the skyscrapers, the guttural roar of engines pushed to their limits. This wasn't just some weekend joyride. This was the symphony of the city's underbelly. Jack knew this symphony well. He'd spent 10 years in Raven City's underbelly, seen the darkness festering beneath the glittering facade. He knew the players, knew the stakes, and tonight, the stakes were higher than ever. A name echoed in Jack's mind: Salvatore Sal DeMarco, the city's Shadow King. He ruled the illegal street racing circuit with an iron fist, his grip on Raven City tightening with each illegal race. Tonight, Sal had organized the deadliest race yet, and Jack was determined to put a stop to it. The warehouse pulsed with a chaotic energy, a sea of faces, young and hungry, illuminated by the flickering neon signs. The air reeked of gasoline, sweat, and anticipation. Jack navigated the crowd, his eyes scanning for any sign of Sal. 2 cars were lined up, gleaming under the single spotlight. Engines growled, a challenge tossed into the thick air. Drivers, young and cocky, revved their engines, their eyes locked in a silent duel. This was more than just a race. This was a fight for dominance, a dance with death. Jack had seen it all before. The reckless ambition, the lust for speed, the desperate need to prove something. He knew the allure of the fast lane, the intoxicating rush of adrenaline, but he also knew the price. The lives shattered in a blaze of twisted metal. The families left to pick up the pieces. He pushed through the crowd, closer to the action. His eyes, hardened by years on the force, searched for his target. Sal DeMarco wouldn't miss this. He was always in control, pulling the strings from the shadows, and Jack was determined to drag him into the light. The roar of engines shattered the night. The crowd erupted as the cars shot off the starting line, tearing down the abandoned street. Jack watched, his jaw clenched, as the racers pushed their machines to the limit, their taillights disappearing into the darkness. He knew he couldn't stop the race, not anymore, but he could be there at the finish line. He could be there to pick up the pieces, to bring Sal DeMarco to justice. The night air crackled with tension, the screech of tires, the blare of horns, the roar of the crowd, a symphony of chaos orchestrated by Sal DeMarco. But Jack could feel it, a shift in the air, a tremor of danger. This wasn't just a race anymore. Something was wrong. His instincts screamed at him as a wave of unease washed over him. He had to get to the finish line. Fast. Lives were at stake, maybe more than he even realized. The warehouse, once buzzing with energy, was now eerily silent. Jack pushed through the dwindling crowd, his heart pounding against his ribs. The air hung heavy with a mixture of exhaust fumes and fear. He could feel it in his gut. Something was about to explode. He burst into the makeshift control room, a single flickering fluorescent light casting long shadows on the grimy walls. 2 of Sal's men stood huddled over a monitor, their faces illuminated by the flickering images of the race. Jack. Where is he? Jack growled, his voice echoing in the silence. The men exchanged nervous glances. They knew who Jack was, knew the kind of trouble they were in. One of them, a wiry man with a nervous tic, pointed a shaky finger at the screen. "Man, boss, he's gone to the finish line." Jack didn't hesitate. He slammed his fist into the table, the metal groaning in protest. Jack? Not anymore. He could see it in their eyes. The fear. The knowledge that tonight, the game had changed. The finish line. A chaotic tableau of flashing lights and mangled metal. One of the cars was a twisted wreck, smoke billowing from its crushed hood. The other sat idling, its driver long gone. The air reeked of gasoline and something else. Fear. Jack surveyed the scene, his eyes scanning the shadows. He could hear the sirens in the distance, their wails growing closer. But he knew he couldn't wait for backup. Sal DeMarco was here somewhere. And tonight, their game of cat and mouse was over. He heard a muffled groan coming from the wreckage. A young man, his face pale and contorted in pain, struggled to free himself from the twisted metal. Jack raced towards him, his heart pounding in his chest. "Jack!" "Easy, son," Jack said, his voice calm despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "Help is on the way." The young man's eyes fluttered open, filled with a mixture of pain and fear. He coughed, blood staining his lips. "Young man, Sal, he rigged." His voice trailed off, his eyes losing focus. Jack's blood ran cold. Rigged. It wasn't an accident. Sal had planned this. He glanced around, his eyes searching the darkness. Where was he? What was he planning? The first rays of dawn sliced through the darkness, casting long shadows over the city. The air, still thick with the stench of gasoline and fear, was beginning to clear. Sirens wailed in the distance as the city slowly stirred from its slumber. Jack stood on the rooftop overlooking the urban sprawl. The events of the night played out in his mind like a grainy film reel. The roar of the engines, the twisted metal, the look in the young racer's eyes. He had been so close, but Sal DeMarco had slipped away once again, melting into the shadows like a phantom. He knew this wasn't over. The fight for Raven City had just begun. But as he looked out over the city, he couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Sal DeMarco was a cancer slowly poisoning the city from the inside out, and Jack knew with chilling certainty that he would be back. The chase wasn't over, it was just beginning.
Detective Alex Carter.
He knew the city's pulse, the rhythm of its underbelly. Raven City, a concrete jungle where shadows held secrets, and the night echoed with the purr of engines pushed to the limit. Street racing, a dangerous game. Alex was tasked to shut it down. The captain's orders were clear.
No more casualties, Carter. This ends now.
Each race was a spark igniting chaos in Raven City's veins. Alex could already smell the burnt rubber, feel the rumble of engines in his chest. He was ready to dismantle this deadly game piece by piece. His first target, the Devil's Run, a notorious race that snaked through the industrial district. Alex went undercover, blending into the crowd of adrenaline junkies and thrill-seekers. He could feel the energy crackle in the air, thick with anticipation and exhaust fumes, the screech of tires on asphalt, the roar of the crowd. Then a blur of speed. He watched as souped-up cars tore through the night, their drivers pushing the limits of control and sanity. But something felt off. The intensity in their eyes, the desperation in their maneuvers. This wasn't just about the thrill. This was different, this was personal. The deeper he dug, the more Alex realized these weren't just reckless kids. The races were a carefully orchestrated operation, bankrolled and controlled by a hidden force. He soon uncovered the truth, the Verducci crime family. Their name was whispered in fear, their grip on Raven City tightening like a vice. The Verduccis used the races as a front, a way to launder money and assert their dominance. The racers were pawns, expendable pieces in their twisted game. Alex had stumbled onto something bigger, more dangerous than he could have imagined. He knew their reputation. Ruthless, powerful, untouchable. The case became personal. Alex was caught in a web of corruption, his every move watched by the Verducci's ghosts. He felt the weight of the city on his shoulders, the hope of justice resting on his every move.
The pressure was immense, the stakes higher than ever. One wrong step could cost me everything.
He pushed forward, driven by a sense of duty, a thirst for righteousness. He chased shadows, piecing together clues, unraveling the Verducci's intricate web of deceit. But with each step closer to the truth, the danger amplified. Threats turned into close calls into deadly warnings. Now Alex found himself at a crossroads. He had a choice to make. He could bury the truth, play it safe, and let the Verduccis maintain their iron grip on Raven City. Or he could risk it all, expose their empire, and face the consequences.
My gut screamed at me, warning me of the danger. But my conscience, my unwavering sense of justice, demanded action.
The weight of the decision pressed down on him, heavy as a shroud. He knew that whatever he chose, the city would never be the same. The fate of Raven City and his own hung precariously in the balance. His next move would be his most crucial. His heart pounded in his ears. The city held its breath.
City lights, burning rubber, Alex Cross, homicide detective, Washington, D.C. I've seen my share of darkness, but nothing prepared me for the high-octane, blood-soaked world of underground street racing. It started with a whisper, a name, Rico. They called him the Dragon. He was a phantom, a legend on the asphalt, but rumors also placed him at the heart of the Verducci crime family. My latest case, a string of seemingly random homicides, businessmen, a city councilman, even a local priest. No connection, except for one detail. Each victim was found with tire tracks near the scene. The MO was clean, professional. These weren't random acts of violence, this was a message. My gut told me these murders were connected to the street racing scene. I went undercover, infiltrating their world. The adrenaline was addictive. The roar of the engines, the smell of burning rubber, the blur of city lights. Beneath the surface, I could feel a current of danger. These racers weren't just thrill seekers, they were pawns in a bigger game. The price of velocity. Speed was the currency of this world. Reputation was earned on the asphalt, measured in tenths of a second. Win and you were king. Lose and you paid the price. It might be your car, your money, or even your life. Loyalty was everything in this world. You had to trust your crew with your life, literally. I learned the hard way. I befriended a young racer named Danny. He was cocky, ambitious, hungry to prove himself to Rico. He saw me as a ticket to the big leagues. He introduced me to the inner circle, to the high-stakes races where fortunes were won and lost. Danny taught me the rules of the road. No cops, no mercy. He told me about Rico, the enigmatic leader who commanded absolute loyalty. Rico wasn't just a racer, he was a symbol of power, a phantom who controlled the streets from the shadows. Blurred lines, racers and enforcers. The line between thrill seeker and criminal was razor thin in this world. Racers weren't just competing for trophies and bragging rights, they were running drugs, guns, even people. The Verducci family had their hooks in deep, using these adrenaline junkies as their personal army. They were expendable, easily manipulated. I saw it firsthand. Danny got in over his head. He owed money, a lot of it. He was desperate, willing to do anything to pay off his debt. He started running drugs for the Verducci family, using the races as cover. He thought he was invincible, untouchable. He was wrong. One night, after a race, I saw Danny get into a car with two men. I recognized them, Verducci muscle. I never saw Danny alive again. His death was ruled an accident, a hit and run, but I knew better. He had been silenced, another casualty in Rico's twisted game. Asphalt jungle. The races were a blur of color and noise. Engines roared, tires screeched, and the air crackled with anticipation. The crowds were a mix of adrenaline junkies, thrill seekers, and underworld figures. But beneath the excitement, there was an undercurrent of tension, a sense that anything could happen, and it often did. Crashes were common, sometimes fatal. Fights broke out, fueled by testosterone and alcohol, and then there were the whispers, the rumors of police raids, rival gangs, and Rico's wrath. The stakes were high, the risks even higher. I attended race after race, gathering evidence, trying to connect the dots between the street racers and the Verducci family. I needed to get to Rico to expose his operation and bring him down, but he was always one step ahead, a ghost in the machine. The Dragon's Shadow. Rico was a myth, a legend whispered about in hushed tones. He was said to be the best driver the city had ever seen. Some said he was invincible, untouchable. Others said he was a ruthless killer, loyal only to himself and his ambitions. His real name was a mystery, his face hidden behind a helmet. But his reputation preceded him. He was the dragon, and he breathed fire. I finally caught a glimpse of him at a race outside the city. He was tall, lean, with an aura of quiet intensity. He moved with a predator's grace, his eyes constantly scanning his surroundings. He exuded an air of danger, of power barely contained. I watched him as he watched the races, his expression unreadable. I knew that behind those eyes, a mind was working, calculating, strategizing. He wasn't just a racer. He was a chess master, playing with the lives of everyone around him. I had to stop him before he made his next move.